Happy Father's Day, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Swerve with me. This is a show where we have adult conversations for mature audiences only. We talk to people that have overcome challenges and they're not afraid to show their scars or to speak their truth. Truth is what you're going to hear tonight. I want to say a special Father's Day to those fathers who are holding it down every day, not only taking care of their own, but extending their hand to the village. We salute you, fathers, today. And for the fathers who are struggling and still trying to work it out, we're with you. We're praying for you. And we are excited about how you are going to turn things around. We want to encourage you to put your best foot forward. You may be rejected, but you may be accepted. And so, whatever you do, just make sure you do it with all your heart and reach out. For the fathers who've already raised sons, I'm calling you to go back. Go back to the village and do it again and help somebody else to raise their son. And so tonight I've gathered four rather phenomenal men from across the US, the Bahamas, the Turks and Caicos Islands. And we want to talk about what's happening with our sons. What's going on? Why? What kind of boys are we raising? What kind of help do they need? What do we have to offer them? We want to have that discussion tonight, and I'm proud to have bringing into the conversation tonight, first of all, Khayyam. Khayyam. Oh, I'm sorry, sorry, Keno. Hi. Keno's a consultant from Turks and Caicos Islands. He is the founder of Boys to Men Forum, and we're happy to have him tonight. Then I'm gonna bring in now. This is Khayyam from Kingston, my big brother. Met him and just connected with him. Welcome, welcome to the show. And finally, I don't know if to call him my little brother, but I pretty much known this one all my life. Jerome Pratt, guys. Inside story. We grew up in the same church. His father was the pastor. And so we've known each other all of our lives and we've come up in ministry together. And so I'm happy to have him to be a part of this forum. So Jerome is a pastor, but he's also um, a father, and just doing so many things in the community to make things happen, as are all of you. And so I am happy to welcome each and every one of you to Swerve tonight. You can go ahead and share as we talk. Go ahead and share the live stream on your page to let other people know that you're on. And we're going to have this discussion tonight about our sons. I want to get down and begin this conversation with an overall point of view from each one of you. And I just want to start from the perspective that I have three fathers. We're expecting Kellin Russell, but there's a power outage in Nassau, Bahamas, where he's live streaming from. So as soon as he comes on, we'll bring him into the conversation. But I want to start by asking each one of you, being a father, a first time father, what did that feel like? Because it's Father's Day. So take your minds back. If it was a long time ago, if it was not so long ago, take your minds back to that moment when your first child came into the world, or let's go back to when you got the word that your wife was pregnant. Or let's go back to that. I want to start with Keno. Keno, what was that like? Your mic is muted. Hold on.
Good evening, everyone. Boy, joy. We had just come back from summer vacation. We were on a cruise, and we're pretty much newly married, like almost about 2 years, and that was not really even on the radar. And so when it happened, we were both ecstatic, and I was excited, and I began. It's like I just started doing stuff. I started like trying to figure out, what's going to happen, making sure that start preparations, basically, that it just automatically, like this light went off in my head that, hey, I'm going to be a father. There's this other person that I'm going to be responsible for, besides my wife. And I just went into preparation mode. So I was excited. I was nervous, reading all the books, what to do, how to support, you women, they don't give the men the book on pregnancy because, you can have a wife who is nice and calm, and then you have a wife who doesn't like you during the whole pregnancy. So nothing prepares you for that. So it was just a lot of um, nothing prepares you for it, but it's a joy and this is an excitement like none other.
Let's go to Jerome. What was it like when you found out that you were going to be a father for the first time?
So Miranda, it was a interesting situation, being that we were told that we couldn't have kids. We were told that we were having some challenges, and 2 years into the marriage, the doctor said, I don't see this happening. So after the first one came, he said, well, sometimes these things happen. After the second one, he became an ordained minister. And after the third one, he became a pastor of a church. So I assume our situation was able to increase and develop him in ministry from the aspect of miracles can happen. So I was ecstatic when my daughter was born, Jacqueline. She's 28 now. She serves in the Air Force, and she's a strong proponent of being a strong African American woman. But when she came along, like Keno said, I got books, I asked questions. I talked to my father, who had 5 kids, but it had been so long for him. He just said, enjoy the experience. And whatever you do, don't lose any time with your kids, because time is of the essence. And as soon as you let it go, you'll be sorry for the fact that I didn't spend enough time. So it was just exciting. And I went ahead and I did what I could as far as to prepare myself for that event.
Khayyam, tell us about your experience.
Well, my experience is not like the other two gentlemen. My experience is totally different. I was 19, sailing the world, traveling the world, and I was in the military. And my girlfriend at the time became pregnant before I went on deployment, and my first child, which was my son, was born while I was on deployment. I wasn't there when he was born, but when I came back into the States, she had came on board and brought him, and I saw him, and I was, had a mix of emotions. I was happy, kind of unsure what to do, which way to go from there. And, through the process of time, we didn't marry. So it was kind of it was an interesting time in my life. But maybe we'll get into how that played out later. I believe a lot of what happened in that time period kind of prepared me or got me in a place to be where I am now in dealing with the pandemic of fatherlessness, especially in the African American community in America. Having dealt with it firsthand, being a product of it, and then
Right.
myself just not knowing how to be a father, what is a father, and I got pulled into that same system. Thank God I got out of it, but that was my journey with my first child.
Right. When you approached fatherhood, and this is for all of you again, what are some of the first things that you said to yourself about the kind of father, if you did, that you wanted to be for this child? And so I'm going to reverse it and start with Kyle. Tell us, what were you thinking?
Um,
Because you're 19, you're
mhm.
in the military, you're single still. So
Still single.
did you have any thoughts about what kind of father would I be to this child?
Well, the first thing that I said was I would never do to my son what was done to me. And when he was born, spent a lot of time with him. Took care of all his needs, him and his mother. But through the process of time, in my growing, evolving from a boy to a man, there were pitfalls that incurred in that season of my life, and I ended up being the father that I vowed I would never be.
We'll get back to that. We'll get back
Yeah,
to that. Keno,
yeah,
tell me,
okay.
what were you thinking about the kind of father that you wanted to be to your son?
First of all, with just a little bit about my background, being orphaned at 14, I spent 14 years with my biological dad. And having had a present father who was there, and then having lived with the absence of that, I wanted to be hands-on. I wanted to be I vowed that I was going to be there for this kid every step of the way. I would be present. I would be hands-on. You know, my wife would tell anyone she just had the baby. I mean, I was up in the night with him. I saw it as a badge of honor because those are some of the memories that I remember of my dad being hands-on. So I wanted to be a very hands-on, present father. I thought it was so important. That was so important for me to be hands-on and present, and for my son to know that I will always be there for him.
What about you, Jerome?
So, Miranda, you know my story. My father was 52 years old when I was born. And as a result, a lot of the activities that I wanted to do, he was of an older age by the time I got to my teenage years. So my kids came along, and again, I was involved in any and everything that you can think of, from football to Girl Scouts to brownies to Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, you name it. And a lot of that was to sort of like Keno said, from the aspect that I did not want to lose that time with them at a young age. The goal was to make sure that their lives were impacted positively. They got to do any and everything that their hearts desired, any activities that they wanted to be a part of. We supported that 120%. So I believe that is the key to developing successful, engaged, and prosperous individuals in our society. The involvement has to be there from the father, but also the mother as well, but definitely has to be there from the father.
Mm-hmm. So let's switch the conversation now, and I want to talk about what's happening in your community when you look around and you see young men, you see young boys. Tell us, what is life like for the average young man? I'll stop with you again, Jerome, in your community, because I know your church is in an underserved neighborhood. So what are you seeing among the young men in your community?
So Miranda, some of what I see is there's a lack of direction, a lack of hope in some situations. If individuals are not engaged in extracurricular activities, they tend to find themselves falling prey to the streets, falling prey to gangs, falling prey to activities that would eventually land them in some sort of penal system. Currently, in Virginia, we are getting ready to release 4,000 inmates back into our system in July 1. So we'll have individuals that may have been removed from society for 15, 20 years, 30 years in some aspects, that are now coming back in that did not have that initial upbringing, did not have that initial support from a family. So what I see is a lot of that type of situation in our community, where unless you get the education, unless you're able to get out and move on to a metropolis, that uh, there isn't a whole lot of opportunities for our younger men at this time. Industry has been removed and gone to larger places. So that creates that gap, that void, where now I may be able to get a job, but a job paying minimal minimal wages, or minimum wages, I should say. And the difficulty of using that to raise a family, or that to be involved in a family, is challenging too. So that's what I see, Miranda, occurring.
Okay. Keno, what's going on in the Turks and Caicos Islands?
We have our challenges with the growth that has occurred in the Turks and Caicos Islands. We've seen more uprising and gangs and stuff, but also let me just say this on the positive side. I have seen, and I know so many guys out there that are hands on and that are in their fathers' lives. I interact with these guys at PTA. They're stepping up. A lot of the younger, the fathers and my age bracket, they're really hands on, with their kids. And I want to applaud them if they're listening. But, more has to be done. I think there has been a gap where growing up, a lot of my friends, their father wasn't in their life. And so we're seeing now where that has now affected this generation. The lack of, not having that father in the home, constantly, that father being there. Most of them are raised by single mothers. And so we are now seeing that, and these mothers, they have done phenomenal jobs, but there's some things that, fathers were, God has given you a mother and a father for a reason. And I think we have seen the escalation in violence because now, in my age bracket, back in the day, Jerome and Devin, when we had a fight, we would fist it off. And by the end of the day, we were good. These kids now, they are picking up guns. You kill my cat, I'm going to kill your dog, your parrot, and everything. And so we're seeing a lot of this throughout the Caribbean, where there's a lot of rage and they don't know how to control their emotions. See, we learned, we would fist it off as boys, and we would work that off, but they don't know how to, how do I want to put it? Express themselves and resolve issues. And they're turning to violence as a means of resolving the issues. And a lot of these issues, people are dead because they bumped into me in the club, or somebody said something to me that I didn't like, all because they don't know how to resolve conflict. And their way of resolving conflict is that I'm gonna get you, and then it creates a vicious cycle, because then you kill my boy, and then I'm gonna get you, and then it goes on and on and on. And that's most of the violence that we're seeing among the young men.
Hi, is it the same thing in Kingston?
I was just as Jerome, was it
Mm-hmm.
Jerome? As Jerome
Yes.
was
Yes.
speaking, he was just echoing so many of the sentiments and the things I see as I look across and engage with the young men here, and be involved in the community. One of the things, like you said, there's a lack of understanding how to resolve, no conflict resolution skills. A lot of these young men cannot communicate, and so that's a deficit as well. They don't know how to communicate. They don't know how to articulate their feelings. They don't know, and so what we're seeing is a lot of young men with a lot of misplaced anger.
Yes.
And one of the reasons is because the fathers, and people don't want to believe this, but a lot of our young men are angry because the fathers aren't there. I don't place blame on the mothers. The fathers aren't there, and these young men are angry. So when you're looking at dysfunctional, what I'm seeing here, you're looking at dysfunctional households, and so these kids now, because like I'm more so, my assignment is prevention. So we target the really younger boys, and even at third grade and fourth grade, some of these boys have already been indoctrinated into gang culture and street culture. And it's because of the environments that they're coming out of, basically the home. And so what these boys are looking for, they're looking for what innately they know the home should be like, and they're finding that structure in the set or the gang or their crew. And so the big homie now becomes the dad, and he puts money in their pocket. And that's why these boys, if you know, they're so adamant about their relationship and their closeness. If you hurt one, or not, you don't have to hurt one. If you disrespect one, you could get killed. You know, social media, I see a lot of it. It's a lot of it since the emergence of all of these social media outlets, Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram. A lot of the killings and the shootings evolve from a post. It's just a disrespectful post. So it's really, I see a lot of it. And here in Kinston, North Carolina, we are part of North Carolina that produce like NBA stars. We got Brandon Ingram, and we got Reggie Bullock and Charles Shackelford, who's deceased now, and NBA stars that came from here. And so on the other hand, you got a lot of our young men. If you ask them, what do you want to be? It's either an NBA star or a rapper. And so there's very few that I interact with that say, I want to be a fireman, or I want to be an astronaut, or like when I was coming up, when asked what we want to be, we knew, you know, every day it was something different. But now it's either, you know, they see the rappers and the NBA stars as what they aspire to be. And it's just so much with our boys. But that's what I'm seeing.
When women get together, we often talk about men, whether we're married or have boyfriends. We talk about our careers. We talk about our children for the most part.
Right.
That's what we talk about. We talk about a business idea or travel or something like that. When men get together, are you talking about your children? What are the things that you're talking about? What are the things? Let me start that with Jerome, because Keno just came in. Let me repeat the question. I said, when women get together, we talk about men, we talk about our careers, we talk about our kids, we talk about travel and our aspirations. When men get together in particular, what are they talking about? Are they talking about their sons? Are they talking about what they want them to become? Tell me, what do men talk about? Because I'm
So
going somewhere.
Miranda,
Hmm.
yeah, Miranda, men talk about real life situations, you know, how are we going to continue to develop not only our own children, but you know, the group of gentlemen that I associate with, we always talk about how we can impact the community. You know, what can we do different? So, you know, I'm a part of several organizations, one being Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. How can we help the community? Of course, through the church. What are things that we can do to give back? And then, of course, we're concerned about the effects that our current community, our current society is having, not only on our children, but maybe our children to come, our grandchildren. I'm not blessed there yet, but I'm praying for that situation. So we worry, and when I say worry, not from the aspect that you know, we know that the eternal is not able to do that, he's able to do anything but fail, but we as humans think about the aspect that things are getting worse, and how can I protect my family? How can I protect myself? We're also concerned about aging, and some of these young men on here may be a little bit younger than I am, but what does life look like for me in another 10 to 15 years? Will I have the resources to sustain my life? Do I need to worry about, am I ending up in a retirement home, or will I be able to still sustain myself? Will there be Social Security to assist? These are some of the things that at least myself and other men talk about. Do we have the finances to continue on? When can I retire? That is probably one of the big things that many of us talk about in my age group. And then, of course, we talk about our love lives. We talk about, where we've come from. And we do a lot of reminiscing about how things used to be, and also do a contrast about where we are now. And we see that gap. And the question is, how can we mend that gap? So I think that's a lot of this discussion tonight. How can we mend the gap, or what things can we put in place to make sure that our future children, or our children are for their future, is solid, and that they can have the same type of upbringing or the same type of community support and love that we did as children.
Keno, what are men in your age group, your peers? What are you guys talking about?
Um, to piggyback on typically a lot of the things that Jerome talked about, but for me, intentionally since the pandemic, I have been asking direct questions. How are you doing? How are you doing? Because as men, a lot of times we bounce around, we talk about our jobs, we talk about all these other things that we think define us. But I had someone come up to me that's like a brother, and he says, how are you doing? And I was about to give him the typical, the macho answer, yo, man, I'm good. If anything be any better, man, it would be a setup. And then I said to him, you know what? Today, I'm not good. And I was having a date. And so I have been driving within my sphere with the group of guys that I'm with, not necessarily putting it all out there, but being honest with your feelings. Because what are we taught as men? Suck it up, move on. And we spend very little time addressing how we feel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's good. What about you, Cam? But by the way, happy Father's Day, Kellin. Welcome. So good to see you. Can you hear us? Hi. Can you hear? Your mic is open. Hello?
Who, me?
No, I was talking to Kellin because he popped
Okay.
in. Can you hear us? Okay. I'm not sure what's
The
going
screen
on,
look
but
like it's frozen. Yeah, screen looks
jump
like
in,
it's
Cam.
frozen.
Tell us what are your pairs? What are y'all talking about?
Um. Well, I'm 58, so we talk about retirement, um, what we can do to improve our community. We talk about finances. We talk about money, investments, things of that nature. But then too, as me being a pastor for the last, I guess, a little over 2 years, since George Floyd, I started a group of leaders. We get together once a month. We break bread and we talk, and
Mm-hmm.
in a safe space, and we talk about our how we feeling. Like the brother was saying, take off the robe and the clergy collar. What's going on with you? This is what's happening with me in a safe space. There are no flyers. There are no lives. There's none of that. It's not advertised. We just come together. We link by email, and we'll meet at either a church or a restaurant, and we talk about marriage, about family, about things that affect us as leaders, that we can't do. We can't just talk about on social media, and we can't just, but we can talk amongst ourselves, and a lot of healing, and a lot of men, including myself, have been helped by these unofficial organic gatherings.
Mhm. Our sons are struggling. It's evident. Mothers are struggling trying to raise sons on their own, and even in two-parent homes. People are facing challenges trying to raise children, sons in particular. Why do you think more men are not mentoring and getting involved? Because we know at the heart of every troubled young man out there is really a cry for attention. It's about somebody. It's about a cry to be seen, to be heard. And so I want to ask each one of you, why do you think that more men are not mentoring in general or in your communities? So let's start with Keno. Why do you think more men are not stepping up?
I approach things with I believe three things why people don't do things. One, either they don't want to, they don't understand how to, or they need help in doing it. I don't think men set out and they don't want to be mentors. A lot of us, I mean, we don't know what it was to be a man. Like I told you, um, there's a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of there's so much coming at men, and one of the things that men, we don't like to fail. So in putting yourself out there, there's a chance that you might fail or you might not do a good job. And I think what it is that a lot of people don't understand what it really means. There's a lot of misconceptions. Some people would tell you, if you ask them, oh, a man should be a provider and the woman would raise the kids. There's a lot of different scenarios, a lot of different stereotypes out there. But I think a lot of men don't do it because they don't know how to.
We don't know how to. That's a good point. Good evening to my audience. Let me just jump in before I move on with that same question to read some of the comments. Myrna says that young men need to see older men in their communities as role models, especially in the homes, schools, and churches. Also, opportunities given to learn trades that will help them to better themselves, better self esteem, and steady incomes to support their families. Okay, so Jerome, why do you think more men are not mentoring?
Miranda, I think one of those challenges are the fact that we're not willing to pay forward and we're not willing to give back. When I say pay forward, men in my age bracket right now, we've been blessed. We had the advantage of a community growing up where it was not just your parents involved in your upbringing, but you had individuals in the church. We talked about this, Miranda. We had so many activities, so many things going on that there was no time, no downtime for idleness. So we as men sometimes fail to mentor because we feel like we may be losing some of our own resources, some of our own time. As Keno said, we're not prepared for mentoring. So with anything in life, before you venture out, you should do some research on what does it take for me to be a mentor? What are some of the requirements for mentorship? And how should my mentee approach this process? Because when mentoring occurs, it's not a one-way street. It's a two-way street where that person is seeking knowledge and you're willing to give. Now, I said we're not willing to pay for it because we have been blessed with having great mentors. You, Miranda, you can attest to the fact that we had some great men growing up in our lives in church, in our society. We don't see that as much anymore, or if they are there, they're not present or visible, or they're not accessible So from the aspect of not giving back, we have the skill set, we have the knowledge, but selfishness sometimes comes into play because we may feel like if we get too involved in the community, now we are losing out on the things that we've established. Some people feel like they're going back by having to go to a community to assist. But the Bible talks about the least of these should be greatest. So our goal is to make sure that we are servants, that we have the right servant attitude, and that we're willing to assist those that are in need. So I would say that men should, must, and have to be mentors for our young children in order for them, or young men, in order for them to be successful in life.
Khayyam, we talked about the fact that, and this is not just indicative to your city, of course, but sometimes there's a struggle, because I heard somebody else mention it today, that sometimes there's a struggle getting churches to come together just for an evangelistic effort, right? When it comes to teamwork and pulling together and men working with men in many instances. Why do you think more men are not stepping up and saying, here am I, I'm not sure what to do, but if you teach me, I'm available?
Um, One, I believe that a lot of men, um, not all, but many, need mentoring. They really don't know even how to be men. And I'm not talking about younger men, I'm talking about some of the older men. They have never been mentored, they have never been had been positive. So, so we just can't grab any man and say, "Come on, let's go," because he don't know what to do. And so that has been a real kind of thorn in my side, because there are so many opportunities in our community, and there are some men that are really stepping up. And what's interesting, these are men that are not getting paid. These are men that are not, they don't have grants and 501c3s, but they are using their own resources and their influence and ability to raise funds and get people to pour into their vision for the community. And they are mentoring and got kids involved in different activities, positive things, but it's a small scale. When it comes to the church, and I'm going to be candid, especially the African American aspect of the church, it seems like it's almost impossible to get people to collaborate, and we believe in collaboration and cross pollination, and it seems like it's almost impossible unless you're having a conference and the leader of the church is going to be invited to speak, and unless you're having some event. We have an event-centered mentality, and these events are not helping the community. There's the revivals are not helping the people that need to be helped, especially these kids, these young boys. And when it comes to, sir,
Kellin,
oh,
we can hear you. He's saying he can't hear us. Wow, I
he
don't know
can't.
what's going on. Okay,
Uh,
I'm sorry, Khayyam. Go ahead.
so when
Continue.
it comes to, and I'm not one that says we don't need the four walls. Yeah, we need the four walls, but at the same time, I believe the four walls are for our instruction, and then once we receive instruction, then we go and do. And so, why would a church want to be in a community that's not affecting the community that it is? We should look for opportunities to serve. We are to serve our communities. And so, when we look at the opportunities with these young men are in such a volatile state that there's so much opportunity, but no one church can do it. I don't care how much funding, and it's not a funding issue, it's not a money issue. Um, We just can't get. I see women that come together and they go out into the streets, they go out into the communities, they minister to the young boys, the young men. And I'm talking about where there's gangs and they go in there, but we can't get men to show up. We just can't get men. I just to the life of me trying to figure out what is it that we can't get men in the church. Now I'm talking about men in the church. Why we can't get men that have been committed? You ain't got to pray about it. You already, the gospel is go. You ain't got to pray about it. But you see the opportunities. We see the need. And I do not understand why men won't step up. And even my grandsons, I got 4 grandsons, 1 son and 2 daughters. And so none of my kids, well, my one of my daughters and my son live in the city, but my grandsons no longer live in the city. They live out here in the county where we live. But our interest is in the city. That's where the opportunity is. Mm-hmm. And when I try to, need help for these programs I have, nobody responds but either some of the ladies or my Caucasian counterparts, which provide great help. They're not looking for money, notoriety. They provide their own resources. It's not toxic charity. I see people doing and giving from their heart, really in the trenches of our community, dealing with our kids, loving them and teaching them. And I'm like, if they could see, these boys need to see men that look like them in a positive manner, but we just can't get men to step up. Mm-hmm. And it's so frustrating.
When you have
Miranda, if I can say one other thing, as he was talking, it's a spirit. Can you hear me?
Yes.
It's a spiritual thing. And I think that's what the scripture says about the heart of the father returning to the son, the heart of the son returning to the father. And even with as early as in Genesis, when God asked Cain for Abel, and he said, "Am I my brother's keeper?" Mm-hmm. It is a spiritual issue that we're dealing with. And also a lot of times for us going back into those neighborhoods, especially if we've come up, and I'm not justifying it, especially when we come up, it's a reminder of where we were.
Yeah.
And some of us, that's painful. And some of us, and a lot of men are broken beyond the muscle, beyond the base and everything. You're a broken person, and you can't really mentor and bring peace to somebody else if all your pieces are together, because you can't find peace until you pull all the pieces together. So I think the first thing is that there really needs to be this, you need to take off the mask. And a lot of ministries, they don't even know how to minister to men.
Okay.
They don't even know how to minister to you. Very rare you're gonna find a man. A woman will bawl, she will cry her lashes out. I mean, she'd pull a weave off, but a guy would stay right up there tough. And a lot of people don't know how to minister to men. Mm-hmm.
It's learned behavior that needs to be unlearned. It's learned behavior.
And so
we were taught. Yeah,
we
were taught that way as young men. We were taught not to cry. We were taught to hold your emotions. We were taught to ensure that they did not see you sweat. So you always had to be on point. We talked about the mental issues earlier. Yes, all of us need someone that we can talk to, someone that can help us through situations. But a lot of times we just don't want to talk because we were trained not to share our problems with others. that you have to internalize it and you have to find a way to figure it out yourself. And if you can't figure it out, then too bad. But we can't continue, and I agree with you, to minister to our current males that way. It's all right to express yourself. It's all right to break down and say, hey, I don't know how I'm going to make it. I don't understand what's going on in my life. I need someone to help me to figure this out. And that's where the church has to be so ingrained in the community that we have that outlet or that place where someone can come and talk and say, you know, pastor or deacon or evangelist or minister or whoever, I just need to talk because my world is crumbling right now and I am at the point of losing it and I don't know where to go. I don't want to end up in jail. I don't want to end up on drugs. I don't want to end up losing my life. So help me to figure out how am I going to make it to tomorrow when my today is completely jacked up. And that's where we fail right now, not only as a church body, but as men, because we are not providing that outlet. We are not providing that means of helping somebody through their mess. We will talk about it. You know, Confucius said, a great man is hard on himself and a small man is hard on others. So we play the blame game of everybody. But in reality, we have to step up as men in order to change anything in our society. Nothing's going to change until we step up. You can, and please don't take this the wrong way. You can have as many women as you want out there. I know when I was a teenage boy, I loved my mom to death, but I smiled at her and I heard her in one ear and it went out the other way. But when my dad spoke up, that was a whole different story. I was alert. I sat up because I did not want to disappoint him or disrespect him.
That's good. This leads me into my next question. Kellin is here, Pastor Kellin. Can you unmute your mic? Can you hear us now?
Yes, I can now. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, welcome. Happy Father's Day.
Thank you. Thank you.
So good to have you join us. Listen, we've been talking just about so many different areas about mentoring and what's happening in our communities. And now that you've come in, I want to ask this question and you can lead with this one. We talked about what men are saying to each other when they get together, but when you talk to young men, when you have conversations, whether they're young boys, pre-adolescents or adolescents, what are they saying to you? What are they saying to you? Are they saying anything?
In many instances, you have to speak to young men, in particular the teen young men, as well as the millennials. For the most part, men have been wired to be men, and so for the most part, when you speak to them, you have to speak to them with a purpose, in an effort to get a specific. So whatever you are seeking to get from them, whatever you are seeking to get in their psyche, or how you are seeking to get in their psyche, you would have to speak to them with a purpose. You have to be intentional in asking certain questions or intentional in approaching them, because for the most part, they won't speak. They'll speak from a surface place. They'll speak whatever you ask them. But if you are seeking to get into their psyche for change, or if you're seeking to see what they are dealing with, or at that particular time, you have to speak to them intentionally in an effort to get what you are looking for out of them, because otherwise they won't say much unless you intentionally speak to them with a purpose.
When you're working with your boys in the Boys to Men forum, how do you get them to open up?
You have to meet them at their level.
Right.
That is key. You don't come in trying to fix them. You don't come in with an agenda. You let them set the pace. You have some things in the back of your mind, some goals that you want to achieve, but sometimes it's just sitting there and shutting your mouth and listening. Mm-hmm. Or just sitting with them, or just being with them. You allow them to set the pace. And you have to meet them at their level. You can't come to them with some prearranged idea, because they'll see right through that. These kids, they can spot phony a mile away.
Yes, they can.
Uh,
Absolutely.
So people don't care what you know until they know that you care.
Right.
So you gotta build that credit. You gotta build up your credit. You gotta let them say, show up with lunch, with a lunch bag one day. Show up to a soccer game. Let them see that, hey, man, this dude, he ain't like all the other guys. Especially if they've been in a place where, they've been in a household where there have been men in and out of the household that made promises and didn't live up to that.
Absolutely.
Men are very unforgiving. You burn us once, and sometimes that takes a lifetime of undoing. So a lot of these kids, even though they're young, they're going through a lot of rejection and a lot of hurt. And even though you're coming with good intentions, and if they can't feel where you're coming from, they're not going to talk to you.
Khayyam, what are the boys saying in your community? What are they saying to you when you get that opportunity to connect with them?
Some of the things they're saying, that nobody is listening to them. They can't get anybody to pay any attention to how they feel. And when we interact with them, one of the things I do, I learned to listen, and not have all the answers all the time. Sometimes it's just a time for listening and getting them into a safe space where they can talk. But before you can when you're dealing with these boys in our community, especially communities that are challenged, one of the things you just can't march in there and think you're going to save the day. You have to build a rapport with the community, and then you have to build relationships. Even when we go into these communities to minister, we don't just jump out in the community and start preaching and thinking people, no, they're not coming, they're not listening. I don't care how good you can articulate. You have to build a relationship. You have to get out with the people, and they have to know that they can trust you. And one of the issues that the community has with the church is broken promises. Broken promises. We'll be back. We'll be back next week. And with these boys, you cannot, with you say, I'm coming to get you. I'm going to take you here. You might have valid, they don't want to hear excuses. And it don't take but one time of you breaking your promise, and they're done. They're done. Not only with you, but the next man that comes along that has pure intentions, they don't trust easily because they've been rejected, lied to, mishandled. And a lot of the anger you see, these boys aren't mad or bad, they're scared. And so the anger and the tough guy and the thugged out, all of that those are defense mechanisms. And so to cut through all of that, when you come, also you have to come with a level of respect for them. And once you can get them to trust you, then they will talk to you. But I promise you, if they don't trust you, I don't care if you come in bearing gifts, they're not going to talk. They don't have anything to say. You have to build trust first. And some of the things that I hear, sometimes I have to contain myself because it tears my heart out. Some of the things that some of our children, our boys go through. Oftentimes what we see on the news and the police blotters are just manifestations of issues where these boys have been crying out and nobody's hearing them. And so all we're seeing is he got the dreads and he's, oh, look at those tattoos, and he got teardrops tatted in. We got to see past all of that stuff is defense mechanism. We have to see past that. And if we can ever win them enough to where they'll let us in, we can never abuse that or lie to them if we say we're going to do something, we got to do it, because these boys will look for you. They're going to keep you at a distance for a minute to find out if you, and like the brother said, these kids are smart. They can smell a fake from a mile away. So if your intentions aren't pure, they're not going to talk to you anyway. You know,
Jerome, what can the church be better at when it comes to reaching these types of young men who are seeking to be seen and to be heard?
One thing the church can do, and we've heard a lot of solutions and potential solutions, but one of the things that we really can do as a church is to speak their language. I can't communicate with you if I don't give you or I'm not speaking what you need to hear. And when I say that, as much as the gospel is needed, think about how Christ interacted. He fed first and then he ministered. So he built the trust. He established rapport. He got their attention. He sat the men down, because men sometimes can be unruly, and got order. And then he was able to minister. So we as a church need to be able to speak the language. We can go back to the day of Pentecost. It says that they were one in all accord, and as a result, they were able to speak each other's language.
right.
So they were able to speak German or speak Chinese or speak Italian. They spoke to the person. That is a problem. We're not trying to reach the person. We're trying to reach numbers.
Right.
We want to fill the pews and not fill lives. Many times we're not concerned about changing anybody. I just want to be able to look out there and see 5,000 people. And I want my podcast to be heard. I want my books to be sold. I want these things to happen, but do I really have a relationship with that person? So we have to be intentional in the way we speak, and we have to speak their language so that they can understand it and that we can help them and meet them at their point of need. What is the purpose of all this if I can't meet you at your point of need, at your brokenness, at your crossroad in life? If I can't meet you there, then I just need to keep walking.
That's right.
But the church has to be able to speak their language.
Go ahead, Kellin, add to that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, because I think it was about in the month of April, I went to speak at a high school, all boys. They were kind of the problematic boys, they would have called them. And when I entered the room, I had to first kind of look and see, and not from a stereotypical place, but I had to look and see what I was dealing with in the room. I had to ask them some questions. And when I asked them some questions, that was when it brought me to the place of being able to speak their language. Because if I had gone in there trying to come from a holy roller perspective, then I knew for a fact that they would have shut down. So what happened was, when I asked them some questions that kind of triggered my thoughts, I realized that immediately I did not need to come from a pastoral perspective of these and thou, but I had to go into my testimony of them understanding that while I may not have been on the blocks, smoking, etc., I knew what it was to be abused by my father, and that's physically abused. I knew what it was to almost be mentally traumatized and abused by my father, by him taking out the light bulb out of the room, kind of making me starve and all of that stuff. So when they start to hear me speak from that perspective, then you would find out that conversation started to spring all over the room.
That's right.
And that is because, again, we spoke their language. And so, first of all, when I asked them about the sometimes you not only can you have to speak their language, but in some instances, while you don't change who you are, you have to sometimes go in there looking like them as well. Because knowing that I was going to speak to the problematic boys, I normally wear my dashiki and try to have the little, holy-ish look. But at that perspective, I had to go in there in a polo button-down shirt, jeans, and tennis. Now imagine that. So when they saw me, they realized they heard the term pastor, but they saw I kind of looked like them, and then I eventually started to speak like them. So once we begin to speak their language, I spoke about sex without it having to be like, ooh, you understand? So we spoke about sex. I spoke about the different things that I encountered in my time. So speaking their language, once the church can speak the language, and not only speak the language of the people, but not come from a judgmental place. Because I think a lot of times as church people, we sometimes like to hug grace and mercy in our chests as if
Mm,
grace and mercy belong to us.
Yes,
But I
sir.
believe if we get to the place where we speak their language and come from a place of grace, love, and mercy, I believe that that we won't have the challenge that we are posed with from a religious and self-righteous perspective.
now that we talk in church and all of us are a part of this, I would go around. Why aren't we doing enough? Why aren't we doing enough? Anybody take it first. Why aren't we doing enough?
Lord, I want to answer
Why aren't
that.
we doing enough? Come on, this show, we
You
have
know what?
adult conversations for
Can I
mature
be honest with you?
audiences.
I have been a youth director at several different ministries, and it's just a checkbox for most ministries. They don't put no funding behind it. They don't put
Absolutely.
no love behind it. It's just something to have
Okay.
because um, it's just something to have. There's no major thought behind it, and most of the time, as a youth director, I had to raise my own budget. I had to spend my own money because young people don't pay tithes. I can leave that right there.
Why aren't we doing enough? Let's talk about it.
I personally believe, I think the kind gentleman trying to get all us in problems tonight, but the reality of the situation is a lot of times it is not. We have a lot of stuff pri- uh, prioritized in in certain areas, or in certain ways. So you would find out that again, we look across the board and we see what is bringing in the money. We don't necessarily look at what will be our return later on if we invest into our young people. So what begins to happen is we look at what is bringing in the money, what is going to keep us afloat for us to be in the limelight, etc. And so sometimes we get so caught up doing church, trying to reach our personal budgets, trying to ensure that we don't have a flop in attendance numerically, etc., that we lose sight of keeping the main thing the main thing. And I believe that what happens as it pertains to us not doing enough, it is because we also come from a selfish perspective. What am I benefiting from that? A bunch of children jumping up, talking about being mentored, being tutored, etc. What are we benefiting from it? And I think that that is where we lose our sight of the next generation. And so we find ourselves not doing enough, not putting interest in particular in our boys, etc., etc. And what begins to happen is we find out that the church grows, develop, and there's a total gap in the generation. So you have, whereas the traditional, the old folk, the folks who are coming up the mountain, as we would say, that would be the greatest percentage of our church. But because we have not invested, take time out to talk to them. I had a millennial that I spoke to today after church because I saw one or two things with her, and she was, slipping back. And she said, "Man, it's just becoming boring to me. It's not me. It's not." And I think simple things of us having the time to talk to them, just getting out of ourselves, man. Just, forget about sister this one, brother this one, and deal with our children, deal with our millennials. I believe if we just stop focusing on the smoke screen and the camouflage of what church should be, I believe that we would have a more grounded and rooted generation. But it's because we prioritize differently. What is influencing us, what we are benefiting from, that is what we focus on. And that's where the challenge comes in a lot of times with our generation.
Why aren't we doing enough?
So sometimes we we doubt ourselves. We doubt the ability that we can do more. We live on past successes. So
Absolutely.
with my church, I can use an example. We've had a tremendous amount of young people that have come through, but they've matriculated, gone on, and may not come back because now they're gone on to college. They've established their lives. They have children. They have families, and their responsibilities have moved, or their attention has moved away from that church to now, how can I make it in my life? So we doubt the ability to bring them back. We're scared sometimes because we're not sure on what we should do, and we're afraid to move out of our comfort zone, which is, I know sister so-and-so has been coming to church for 40 years and she's going to keep coming until she leaves this world. But,
Right.
The Bible says, go ye into all the world and preach the gospel. It didn't say go into your church and preach the gospel. It said go into all the world. And then sometimes we're not ready and we're not motivated anymore because we're still stuck on past successes. So we start talking about the good old days and where we were and how things were. But we can't pull the past forward, and we can't pull the future to us. So all I have is right now. So we have to continue to operate in this sense of, I have to have each member reach a member, or I have to have each ministry reach another ministry. And what we have done, at least in my community, is a lot of collaboration of churches, because we have some rural churches, and everyone can't do it on their own. But we found that if we combine, we have something called the Freeman Community Day Incorporated, where we come together, 7, 8, 9 churches, and we are able to provide funding for schools. We're able to provide backpacks and school supplies. We're able to help those in the community that are in need. So we have a conglomeration or collaboration of ministries in order to be more effective. Can we do more? Yes. Must we do more? Yes. We have to, in order for this, the kingdom. And that's what it's all about. It's not about us. It's about building the kingdom. And we can't build a kingdom by ourselves. We have to work together in order for this to be established.
All right, Apostle, jump in.
I was just, as the gentleman was speaking, it just reminded me, and I was hearing, something that I talked about today, and one of the reasons why we're not is we're desensitized to what's going on in the community. We don't even know what's going on outside of our churches. We don't care. You don't care because everything's going good with you. There are churches here that have millions of dollars that contribute absolutely nothing. Getting some backpacks before school. Kids don't even carry books anymore. So, it looks good to give out a bunch of backpacks. That looks good. I was reminded that when the prophet Isaiah came to Hezekiah and told him, after Hezekiah had let the Babylonians in and showed them all this stuff, and Isaiah came and told him, he said, yeah, what you've done, these folk gonna come back, and they're gonna take, one of the things he said, they're gonna take your descendants, your children, into captivity. And they're going to take everything. You're going to lose everything. But the emphasis is on, as we're relating to this conversation, they're going to take your children. They're going to take some of those that come from you, and they're going to make them eunuchs. And this joker said, That's a good word. And I'm paraphrasing. He said, at least it won't happen to me. Because what Isaiah was telling him, this is what's coming in the future. And we know that Nebuchadnezzar came and took all the stuff, took the young men and made them eunuchs, having them serve in his palace. But Hezekiah's response, where it was one that it should have been alarm, it was relief. As long as it's not happening while I'm here, I'm not worried about, even though they're my descendants and my children and my grandchildren, as long as it don't happen to me. And I think many of us have adapted that mentality. It ain't happening to my kids, and the people in my church, our church is paid for, and we got the money, and let somebody else do it. We're okay over here. And I'm saying it because I've seen it. Oftentimes, the churches that are actually in the field are not the prosperous, as we would call the prosperous 1,000-member churches. There are a few people that have the heart of God, and they are out there with giving their heart. And so if we could get more churches to collaborate and come together, and we do it together, I don't care about whose name is on that. That's get beyond that. Do you see it? Is there not a cause?
Yes.
We can see, look, we don't have to see the statistics. I can take you to 800 housing units here and knock on the door and say, is your dad at home? And they were like, what, dad?
What's that?
Is there not a cause? Why we can't get men in our churches to come together? Let's partner with, if you see a church that has a mentoring program, how can I partner with you? What can we do to help? Can we bring the food? What can we do to help? I don't have to lead. What can I do to help? That's where I am. That's where we are. Because my church, we sure can't do it. We're very active in the community. League of Honorable Young Men program. But we cannot get those that look like us to collaborate. Your question is why? I hate to say it, folk, they're not concerned. It doesn't affect them. They don't care. Or they don't know what to do. And that takes us back when we're talking about men. The men need mentoring. The men are broken. And the men need healing. You can't take, and that's why, in certain things that we're doing in the community, when I'm trying to get men, I'm to the place, it ain't necessarily got to be a Christian man, but you got to be a man that's with some character, and you got to be a man of integrity, because I'm not going to have just anybody, because they're a man, out here trying to pour into these boys. They've already been messed up. They don't need, you're messed up, and now you're out there messing them up. That's counterproductive to what we're trying to do.
Right.
And
you said so much. You said so much. I want to get Kellin in because he came into the show late, and I want to ask you a question that I've already asked them previously, and that is, why aren't more men stepping up to the plate and offering themselves as an extended village, as the village too, to support boys in our communities?
I'll tell you something, Miranda. We live in different cultures, but our culture here, one of the factors why you have a lot of men in some instances not stepping up to the plate is because in many instances of the mother, be it the mother or the parents at large, reluctance to have men deal with them, because the mindset over here, because of the different challenges, the different rumors, the different things that would have already circulated, you would have, whereas some folks are afraid to go into the mentorship programs because they are afraid that their boys may become a target for the person who is seeking to be the mentor. So you have mothers are afraid that their sons would get involved in a relationship with the gentlemen, etc. So you find out that a factor that is concerning is because some men are afraid to get connected with being viewed as someone who wants to pray after their sons, etc. So that there is a challenge. And then, of course, you have, whereas sometimes because you would have been in these situations, whereas you were broken, you were damaged, you had an absent father, etc. Sometimes you would find out that looking back is almost like taking the scab of a raw wound that is under. And so you would find out that they become desensitized in going back because they don't want to look back as a reminder that this boy look exactly like me. And I don't know if I have the grace to deal with that because sometimes inwardly we have not healed as yet. So you have, because of the lack of us wanting to look back at where we came from, which is not necessarily right, but also because you have a lot of perceptions that is surrounding what is the reason you want to help, and so that's a factor.
So that's a whole different perspective than what you would normally think of in terms of mothers being concerned possibly that their sons may be molested by a potential, I guess
Absolutely.
that's where vetting comes in and all that kind of
Vetting,
stuff.
yes.
Yeah, to ensure that they have some kind of peace of mind and when they send these children into these programs. um, we're almost out of time. I usually have at 9:30, so I want to ask this, but I you guys are definitely coming back because this conversation we're just scratching the surface of this right now. But one of my goals in doing this show was to begin to provoke men to begin to think about what else can we be doing to help our sons or what should we take another look at something that we may be doing that's not being effective and try to curb that. So I want to ask all of you as we wrap up, as you leave the show, what comes to mind readily about what else you could be doing or what perhaps you may want to take another look at? So anyone can start.
What I think I would like to look at is prioritizing our dealing with our young men. And the reason why I say that is, as we stated earlier, sometimes we don't think that men need help. We don't think that they need the support factor or the support system, because we have been taught, as I said, that each man should be able to handle his own life or handle his own situation. But I believe and I think that we need to create that platform where men can actually speak and feel safe, talk about the trauma, talk about uh, the pains that they're going through, talk about the anguish, talk about the fear. And I believe once those conversations begin to surface, that we will see that these individuals may desire to have a need to go further into the community and to provide help for those that are coming up, those young men that are out there. And then also the involvement that we need to have. As I said earlier, we're going to have about 4,000 inmates being released into our society or into Virginia here shortly, and 400 in my community as well. So what can we do to provide a means of helping those individuals who have been institutionalized to break that mindset, to find a way in their community to be successful and viable citizens of their community. So that's a responsibility that we need to look at, myself as a church body, as a church leader, but also as a father in the community.
Well, for me, one of the things I'm going to do is that I want to talk to you guys some more offline to figure out some of the things that you're doing, to learn from, learn some of the techniques and methods that you have in place, and to just share. You know, the Bible says iron sharpens iron, and you know we're in this together. Even if it's just an encouraging word, you know, develop that relationship where you know, hey, I just send you an encouraging text. But the other part of that is that I'm going to continue with my resolve to be the change that I would like to see. You know, it starts with that giving back. You know, I had someone who impacted my life, and so I'm impacting somebody else's life, and hopefully they'll impact a few more people's lives, and it keep going like that. Keep a healthy cycle of impact going, and break those cycles of rejection and selfishness and all those other things that are going on.
I think for me, one of the things, as I was saying to you earlier, Miranda, that this has opened a whole different can of worms for me because, as I would have said, when you ask the question, what are we saying to our boys? I started to ponder on that, and I said, what are we saying? So what I realized, and I started to do some evaluation. What I am seeking to do now is roll out a Young Men of Honor program, which would begin to speak, first of all, not to their current position, but speak to where they can go, their future. And so we want to do a Young Men of Honor where we look at job creation programs where we are able to also assist these young men with getting into places of employment. We want to start looking at even our young men trying to do things, more or less implement programs athletically. Sometimes you would find out that sports is even a discipline for our young men. So it's a lot of, it's a prong of employment. It's a prong of personal dignity. It is a prong of reformation, and it is a prong of passion and purpose that I want to kind of intertwine into a program to start with our young men and move it eventually up into the millennial area. So this invite caused me to start to think that there is more that I can do, and there is more that I need to be thinking of to be able to roll out. So I want to start there by implementing, first of all, our Young Men of Honor program.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Was somebody speaking? Oh, okay. I'm just, where I am. I'm just encouraged about the what all of you guys are, the difference you're making in your particular cities and areas that you're in, and I'm just inspired to because from my standpoint, sometimes you get frustrated, and just to hear where you guys are and what you're pouring into these youth, I'm just inspired just to keep going, and trying to make a difference. One of the things I definitely, when we started, I told you how I was out of my son's life for like 20 years. And but it's not how you finish, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And we've been reconnected. He went through a lot of bumps. He went through a lot of things because I was not there. And I take full response. I don't blame his mother. I'm take full responsibility and accountability for that. But I'm so proud of the man he has become in the last 4 years. He is really, and so I'm gonna, I guess, to answer your question, Miranda, I'm gonna be more intentional about encouraging men who feel. I think some men feel I messed up so bad that I don't have anything to offer, but that makes you a perfect candidate. And I think I'm gonna do more encouraging men in those times where I have conversation with them, that believe they don't have anything to offer because they just blown it in life, and they're getting back on their feet now, no matter how old they are, that they can make a difference. And I think we need to stop looking at those who it's not always going to come from those who we think are ready.
Yeah.
And that, I'm getting that out of this conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's the men that are struggling that I'm most concerned about. And
Right.
the fact that they are struggling, they need that push. They need that encouragement. I wrote a post today talking about Happy Father's Day, and I was speaking to the man who was struggling and saying, listen, you
Get
may
that.
be rejected the first time, especially if you're somebody who's been absent out of that child's life and you want to make amends and you're trying to step up, but you may be rejected, or you may be accepted. But the thing is, you will never know if you don't make that step. Because if you're beating up yourself about your past and what you haven't done, right? You really don't need to do that, because more than likely the kid's already doing that. The mom's already doing that because you've been absent. And so I'm saying, if you're struggling, take a step. Ask
And
somebody to help. What do you say?
I'm sorry, Miranda, and there's something to add to that. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think we have to also start to develop a culture where the children be open to it, because open to the mending, etc. Because I was speaking today in church, and I was telling them how my father did the cycle in almost every session of season of my life. In primary school, it was, man, look here, I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. And so I wanted to start afresh. In junior high school, so that was 6. He called me 7, 8. In 7th grade, 8th grade, went missing again. In the 9th grade, he came back, man, I'm sorry you weren't there. Then of course, coming up to graduation, you said, man, I'm sorry, I was not there. I want to make it right to you. Listen, Miranda, up to my wedding day, my father told me, man, I'm coming to your wedding and all of that stuff. At the reception, I still was looking at the door to see if my dad was going to come in. And so you would find out that we still have to be able to uh, kind of minister to the kids, to let them know, listen, even though the step with him trying to make it right, with him being sorry, at one point he is going to get it. And I tell you what, Miranda, if I had allowed, I almost want to say, that toxic cycle to kind of get to me, I would have lost my father 1 year later. He died suddenly. But after the wedding, when I was kind of upset, man, listen, I'm getting married now. I'm not gonna allow him to do what he did to me, to my daughter. But if I had shut down any opening, what would have happened was my father would have died. My father died about maybe 9 months after my wedding, suddenly. And what would have happened was I would have been sitting in that funeral with a roller coaster of emotions, trying to figure out, should I wish I did. I know that he kept on apologizing, but I wish I had just kept that window open. So I want us to speak from that real place as well, to let them know that even when the father steps forward and for whatever reason he reverses back, still keep that window span open until the day his eyes close, because that is a part that we also have to look at. That sometimes they want to make it right,
Yeah.
but for whatever the reason is, there's a force that pulls them back. So still have that open mind to continue making it amending and making it right.
And indeed, it is a challenge. I was having a conversation with a young lady today, and she made her Father's Day card. Her father hasn't been, active in her life. She made a card for him today. In the card said, "Happy Father's Day to my sperm donor." The end.
Wow.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Gee.
We had a long conversation after that, but she showed me the card and she said, well, that's what he was.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
yeah, yeah,
Wow.
that was the Father's Day card. So there's a lot of work to be done.
There is. There is.
There's a lot of work to do to encourage those men, and that's why I said you may get rejected,
Yep.
but because the kids have a right to feel they feel the way they are. They're kids, and until they
Absolutely.
mature and come into an understanding more and have more conversations with people, they don't know how to respond to someone who just shows up on special occasions. And so there's the dynamics are varied, but like I said, I
Right.
really wanted to speak to those struggling fathers to let them know, just because you may be rejected, don't allow that to be the thing that holds you back, because you're
Right.
thinking I may be rejected because I haven't done. And perhaps that
Right.
was the cycle that you were in.
Right.
That
Right.
was that cycle. If I
Yep.
try, I don't
Absolutely.
know, I want to, but I'm not sure. Perhaps that was a part of that cycle that you were in. But I want to end this
Right.
on a positive note and say thank you, my brothers. Thank each and every one of you for participating in the show. We have only scratched the surface. There's so much more
Absolutely.
that we can talk about, and I am definitely encouraged and so enthused about doing this again,
Me
because
too.
I
Absolutely.
want to hear about what's happening with what you're doing in your communities. And I like the idea of the four of you collaborating, doing something,
Yes.
whatever, strengthening each other, because we all know that nothing happens by accident.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing
No.
happens by accident. So
Nothing.
definitely exchange numbers, whatever, reach out to me. I'll hook you all up, whatever the case is. But this is the beginning of something that I hope is provoking to other men, whoever comes across this, to understand that while you may be doing a fantastic job now, there's still so much more that can be done.
Absolutely.
And more importantly, if you could reach and pull another brother up with you and say, I need you to serve with me, I need you to walk this out
Yeah.
with me. If you could pull one more up with you and he can pull one with him, and don't despise the small beginnings, take the small
Absolutely.
victories. Take
Absolutely.
it. If you got one other brother to join your program to walk alongside with you, Khayyam, if Jerome, if you got another brother in Kellin, Keno, whatever that means, take it and think about what Khayyam said in terms of it doesn't necessarily have to be someone quote unquote who's born again,
Right.
because remember,
No.
at the end of the day, we're still fishers of men.
Right.
Amen.
We're still
Right.
fishers of men. And so if this is a man who is of good repute,
Mm.
upstanding and moral, and he wants to work,
That's right.
take him on.
Yes.
Take him on. Is God, one plant, and
Yeah.
Paul plant, Apollos water, or whoever, and some anyway, God
God
gets the
give the
increase.
increase.
You
Yeah.
see what I'm saying? However it works. But think about that seriously, what he said, because that makes so much sense to me.
Amen.
If you got a
So
brother
Miranda,
who's willing to listen, perhaps that's the way into the kingdom.
Amen.
Right.
so,
Amen.
so I just want to share this one point, and then I'm done. Think about the people that Christ used as disciples. None of us would
Right.
allow them to come into our church and be in our ministry, but he walked with these men and he allowed them to be effective in a community,
Yep.
and even brought on Judas. So I'm gonna leave that
Yeah.
alone.
Mhm.
I wrote a book about how to build strong ministry teams. And I took a look at the way Jesus constructed his team. I took a look at it and I really studied the characters of the people that he put together to build the team. And I knew then that the church had it wrong. Because when we pick leaders, when we appoint leaders, we appoint them because of loyalty. Jesus looked for skillful men and he said,
Right.
follow me, and then I'm going to make you who I need you
Yes.
to be.
Wow.
We have it wrong.
Yeah.
Wrong. I took that model. Look, Jesus said, you come, fisherman, tent maker, doctor, tax collector, whatever, follow me. I'm going to teach you what I need you to know so that you can become who I want you to be.
Amen.
We don't
Amen.
do that in the church.
Right.
We
Mhm.
want you to
Our
come.
way is not working. It's not
No,
working.
it's not
No,
working because we
no,
want you to come Honda Matunda, whatever, with all your giftings. We want you to come that way.
absolutely.
And then we want you to be loyal. I punched some pastors, and then we want you to be loyal to us. And then we will appoint you
Right.
to serve. And then if you're a heavy tithe giver, and so yeah, you in. You gotta in just
Oh
because
yeah,
you give to the church. I know I've been in church work
absolutely.
all my life, y'all.
You got
Yep,
to nail it right down.
yep.
I've been there all my life. And so I'm saying take another look.
Yep.
Better believe it.
You're right.
Build it the way Jesus did. Build it the way Jesus did.
Right.
If you follow me, I'm going to make
I
you.
hear you. Yep.
I'll do it.
And that's
And
why
he's
we don't
willing to.
reach unchurched people, because everybody in the church churched.
No,
We
because
only
we
know how
want
to
them
reach.
already fixed.
We only know
Yeah,
how to reach church people.
That's why we changed the trajectory of our whole ministry, changed the name and everything, made it simple. No big Hebrew, sons of Issachar of the seventh deliverance of the third realm. None of that stuff.
You
Revive
know
and
what?
revive and restore. That's it. Revive and restore. Really,
absolutely.
I didn't want that. I just wanted Restoration Church, and
Amen.
we couldn't get it because it was taken in North
Right.
Carolina. So I said, well, Revive and Restore Church.
Yeah.
Simple, because we structure the names of our ministries to reach the church people,
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
people we're
All
supposed to
our
be
programs,
reaching.
everything we do is for church
Yeah,
people.
all the
I'm church.
programs
yeah,
they don't know about
Anyway,
this.
we going into a whole nother show.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. But I
we
love
want
this.
the lost.
We're
We
coming
want the
back.
lost. We want the lost. That's what we want.
We're
Not
coming back.
recycling
We're
church
going to
people.
talk some more because again, all of us, all of you pastors, we're in ministry. We're going to provoke some people to good work. Is that okay?
Amen.
We're going
Amen.
to
yes,
provoke the
Yeah.
church to do some good work and to do it the way Jesus did. And let's see if we could
absolutely.
rescue our sons and rescue our
Amen.
daughters, man, because somebody needs someone to marry. I
Yeah,
didn't even get into
yeah,
that portion of the
Wow.
show tonight, but but
Wow.
but when our sons are dying on the streets day after day, when they're not being raised and poured into, and nobody's telling them how to be a good man, how to become a good husband, how to become a faithful father. Nobody's teaching them that stuff. So who's my daughter gonna marry? Who's my granddaughter gonna marry?
mm, mm.
Mm.
Shoot, who am I gonna marry with my single self? Okay. Okay,
Lord,
let me
pray your
just put that
strength in the
out
Lord.
there. So
Pray your
you see what
strength
I'm
in the
saying?
Lord.
We need this to happen. We need
Absolutely.
our boys to be rescued. We need our girls to be rescued. We need this. And I thank you all for stepping in. I didn't even read a lot of the comments tonight, but thank you, audience, for tuning in. I appreciate you so much for joining us tonight. And you'll be back again. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Good night, and I'll see
Yeah,
you next week on Swerve with me. Bye bye, y'all.
Bye.
absolutely.
All right. Take care.
Take care.